Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs. Today we are back with the Wheel of Wonders, and it's a bit of a sad episode because it is the last episode of the Wheel of Wonders as we know it. No! Before we jump into this episode, I just want to preface that this episode is going to be very different, very strange. We already know what the challenge is, and if you've been watching the previous episode, you already know what it is. I don't know how I'm going to record this. I don't know how it's going to look in editing or how it's going to come across on YouTube. We're going to do our best and see what happens. Like I said, after 14 episodes, the Wheel of Wonders park is finally coming to a close. We have built all of this. My goodness, what a park we have built. It has created this almost borderline laggy mess, but we have 14 unbelievable coasters with unbelievable backgrounds and stories and videos attached to them. This has been a wonderful series, but unfortunately, as you see, there aren't really any plots of land left, which means that it's coming to a close. Last episode, we had this coaster, the Candy Coaster, which was a very weird challenge. There were a lot of things that were thrown our way, one of them being that I was sick, so this took extra long. But I think all in all, the kind of candy chocolate factory and the candy wonderland, and the castles and the village, whatever, I think it really works, and I actually really like this addition to the park. Now, for today's episode, this would be the time where we jump into the challenge wheel. We already know what the challenge is. For those who have not been watching the past few episodes, we have discussed that the last episode, if not picked before, is going to be an underground coaster. It's going to be underneath all of this. I have no idea how we're going to do it. Genuinely, no idea. I mean, there's going to have to be parameters put in place on the fly. This is going to be a very casual, definitely rule-bending video. I think it's going to have to be. How we're going to actually record the track underground and everything, I don't know. I really don't know. I've never built anything underground like this, but that is what today's video is going to be all about. We are going to build something that, I don't know if it takes up a small plot of land underground or if it takes up the entire park underground. We will see. So here's our challenge wheel, which, like I said, we're going to be skipping. All of these are going to carry over, at least for the most part. Definitely the viewer suggested ones are going to carry over into season 2, which there will be a season 2. We will talk more about it at the end of the video, but don't worry, these will be used. The reason we are in wheel.side.com is for this wheel here. This is really the first wheel we're going to have to spin, which is every coaster model in Planet Coaster 2, including all the DLCs that we have not already used in the previous 14 episodes. Now, my immediate problem with this episode is, where do we even place a station? Where do we put a chain lift if we have a chain lift? Are we going to be able to maintain momentum? The answer is probably no. We're not going to be able to maintain momentum. I mentioned it before, we're definitely going to have to do some rule bending in this episode. I think the first rule we're going to bend is we're going to have to remove any chain lifts. And you'll have to excuse me, I just think that going underground and literally having to surf the entire landscape of this park, we're going to need to maintain momentum, and that can really only be done with a multi-launch coaster. Although it would be kind of funny to have chain lifts popping up out of the ground. As I was removing the models that don't have launches, I realized we have no track limits, so we don't have to bend any rules. We can put LSMs on any of these, so why not? We don't have to be limited to just launches. We can use any model. So let's see what the model will be. I think I removed all the ones that we've already had, but you know how bad I am at that. A Mauer spinning coaster underground with a launch. This is going to be the most nauseating experience in the entire park. Oh my god. This is not the same spinning coaster that we had in, I think, episode 2, which was this one right here. This is the mock spinning coaster variant. We have the Mauer, which is over here. It's a single car. It's a good model, but for what we're trying to do, this is insane. First, we have to find out if it even has a launch to it. So let's just place the station there. And the good news is, it does have a launch. Actually, it has drive tires, which we can use as a launch, so then we don't even have to mask the track, because we can make the launch whatever we want. So there we go. We have a one-car spinning coaster that's going to be entirely underground and going to be covering a very large distance. Now that we have our model, we actually have to figure out where we're going to access the station, and we have to find a plot of land somewhere for that. And there are some patches of trees in the park, but generally speaking, most of the park is very well covered. On Komodo here, we kind of have this little bit of a dead-end path, kind of transitioning from the jungle into the pirate into the Candyland theme. I think if maybe we expose all this terrain here from the trees, we'll obviously touch this up and make it look nicer, but we can turn this into like some kind of plaza of sorts. I think it makes sense for our spinning coaster to be placed here. I think I'm going to start it way underground, genuinely like probably around 200 feet. How low can we go? We can go 700 feet underground. We are 700 feet underground right now. What? I didn't know you could. Oh, wow. Okay, we were in the void for a second there. And in case you didn't know what I meant before, this is what I meant. I don't know how we're going to film this. And then the next thing I'm going to do is access it, because otherwise we're not going to be able, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose where the station is if we don't do this. So this is going to look really bad, and we're going to have to touch it up later, but I definitely need to actually access the station with my camera. So I have medium graphics on. Typically I have high graphics, which includes ambient occlusion, which means all of this would be dark except for this beam of light coming from this very large hole in the ground. In the final POV and cinematic, oh, I didn't even think about a cinematic. We're screwed. I don't even know if we're gonna be able to do one. Anyway, enough talking. We now have the actual station placed 200 feet underground. And now let's jump over to the random number generator, and we will figure out how fast this drive tire can be, which goes up to 180 miles per hour, so no joke here. So because we are covering a large piece of land, I set the minimum to 40, the maximum to 180, which we just said is the actual max on the drive tire launch. I don't know what I'm looking for here. I guess nothing too high. We also don't want to pierce Muroy's record, which was the whole point of that episode, which I think that was like 150. Let's see what Google gives us. 60. Okay. Maybe a little low, but I think with the multi-launch nature of this, I mean, this isn't realistic. These launches aren't going to be mechanically accessible, so we can put as many launches as we want. 60 will definitely be fine. Let's go to the element wheel, and let's figure out what the first element is going to be. Probably of very many. We're probably going to have so many elements on this coaster. If it's a drop, it might actually be before the launch. Welcome to the coaster element wheel. We have reset it. They are all here. Figured it was appropriate as the very last episode that every single element from the very first episode and beyond are now all here and able to return. And don't worry, this does include the saxophone and the hairpin turn, which I know you guys, you sickos, are very desperate to see once again. It's been a few episodes since we've had it, and statistically, we're not very likely to get it, so fingers crossed, please. After a 60 mile per hour launch, a hairpin turn would be lethal, as we know. Reverse Sidewinder. Okay, I think we've had a Sidewinder, but not a reverse Sidewinder. So a Sidewinder is essentially, really this element here is a very good depiction of it. It's essentially just like a half corkscrew into a half vertical loop, kind of similar to an Immelman. A reverse Sidewinder, I have to remember the difference. I don't remember if it's entering from the bottom or entering from the top. So on Coasterpedia it says a vertical loop followed by a half corkscrew. So I'm guessing a Sidewinder actually starts from the bottom, and then a reverse Sidewinder starts from the corkscrew and drops down, which does mean we can do this before the launch. So we're actually going even deeper than 200 feet. So let me build that quick, as I must turn on auto tunnel so we can actually kind of excavate as we go. Yeah, you see how we're like in the void right now? This is kind of what the vibe of the video is going to be. Oh, we're somehow, all right, there's the underground piece of, all right, yep, the screen is freaking out. Okay, so as you can see, we have our reverse Sidewinder done just before our 60 mile per hour launch into the ether, into the void. Maybe this isn't actually as difficult as I thought if we do these very like cavernous open spaces underground. Later we'll of course make this maybe a little bit more intimate and actually more tunnely. But for now I think that this is working. We can add some kind of show element in this like holding brake section. And then now it jumps into that 60 mile per hour launch like so. And now this invisible piece of track is actually a holding section. Now we have the capacity to do some kind of small show element right before the launch, which I think is pretty cool, and it kind of helps our theme out a little bit, which is naturally going to struggle. Let's see what is after it, or I guess technically the first element after launch. Kickflip. Okay, we haven't had a kickflip in a long time. I think we only had it one time ever. So a kickflip is a one-of-a-kind coaster element, I believe. We had it on the Viking coaster, and it's on Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove, which is over by the Jersey Shore. Like I said, we have had this before, and it was on this Viking coaster here. It's this element here. Pretty much almost like this Immelman, very similar to actually the reverse Sidewinder that we kind of made, but it's twisting at the top and kind of banking more towards the side. How tall we're going to make it, I don't know. We're about to see how fast 60 miles, oh, we're lagging. Okay, there we go. Let's see how fast 60 mile per hour really is. So first, before I make this element, we are going to excavate all of this so we can actually see what we are doing. I'm going to build this element now. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. This is a weird element to make. Okay, so there we go finally. I think that that's a pretty good interpretation, at least, of the kickflip element. I like how it kind of crests very slowly at the top, especially because it is a pretty aggressive element, actually. You see it there. I think that that works nicely. We're gaining a lot of speed back here. We are entering another little tavernous area. So let's see what element is next. There's the kickflip removed. Let's see what is after it. Nice little fun element. Don't see it very often. Good to see it back. Barrel roll. Okay. Not going to really complain about that. Definitely coming in a little hot, so it's going to be a very big barrel roll, but should be okay. Barrel roll, pretty self-explanatory. It's really, I mean, this is more of a heartline roll. Some people know the difference. I don't really look too much into it. I just make it. I make it that. I make it pretty much a heartline roll. Something we've had multiple times in the park. It's almost not even worth showing you. One of the most basic coaster elements out there. Don't even know if I need to show you the time lapse for this one, to be honest. There we go. There's the barrel roll, heartline roll thing done. Very easy element. You see I extended it very long. Most barrel rolls are nowhere near the length of this one, but we have the real estate for it, so why not? You can see what that kind of looks like. Pretty fun element. Definitely not unwelcome. Yeah, let's see what's after it. Actually, before we jump into the next element, I just had like some kind of epiphany on maybe how to navigate the theming portion of this video. So right now we're getting like these pockets of elements, and I'm sure that that will change. I think we just coincidentally got elements that kind of create these tunneling moments between elements. What if for every single room we did it chronologically based on whatever the theme of that episode was? So say for the first area we would mirror episode 1. Then for the kickflip we would mirror the planet coaster theming of the dueling coasters. Episode 3 would be Abyss and the kind of pirate theme going on, and so on and so forth. So that would give us more or less a cap of about 15 elements. I think that that's kind of cooler, to be honest, than just doing the theme wheel, which is probably going to not be done to its full capacity, kind of because of the nature of what we're doing here. I think that this really gives us the capacity to do something very interesting and also very poetic for the final episode. That'll limit us so we don't go on forever. Let's see what follows the barrel roll. There's the barrel roll removed. Let's see what's after it. Sorry for that epiphany or monologue. I just thought of it and I thought it would be really potentially really cool. Okay. Speaking of cool, this is not. Mosasaurus roll is a fantastic element. It's one of a kind to Velocicoaster. Many people argue that it's just essentially a barrel roll. I personally disagree that it's a very unique kind of barrel roll. I mean, this image shows you just how wide that offset is. And if you've been on the coaster, it just feels so different than the typical barrel roll. But the fact that it's immediately after a barrel roll, I'm really going to have to justify the difference between these two, especially in Planet Coaster. I think because we're going with this idea of doing these pockets of themes, we need these transitional elements like this barrel roll. I'm going to kind of more or less make the executive and potentially controversial decision to postpone this element to after whatever we decide to fill up this room. That way we can use the Mosasaurus roll to be this kind of tunneling effect between areas. So whatever we decide fills this room with the wheel, the Mosasaurus roll will follow it. So we'll put this in our pocket and we'll use it for whatever actually comes up next. So there's the Mosasaurus roll removed. Let's see what's going to kind of take its place. I said at the beginning that there's going to be some rule bending naturally with what we're doing here. Hammerhead turn is going to take its place and be followed now by a Mosasaurus roll. Hope you understand, but I think that's probably the best thing to do. Hammerhead turn is definitely a welcome and kind of rare element. Hammerhead turn is a very B&M hypercoaster type element. Here it is on Leviathan, which is actually a Giga Coaster. This image of it on Nitro is a very clear one. It's a type of cutback element. I'm going to make this, we're essentially going to be cutting back inwards this way, actually pretty much adjacent to the barrel roll. I'll probably angle it so it's not interfering with that block of, theming, whatever we decide to do there. Let me build that now and we will see where we're at. Alright, so there's our hammerhead turn done, and you can see we have our little kind of bubble of theming, potentially. This will be episode 3, so this will be the pirate theming, and then the Mosasaurus roll exit is transitioning into the next bubble. This will be episode 4, which I believe was Colossus. Let's see what element it will be. So there's the hammerhead turn done. Let's see what follows next, or I guess follows the Mosasaurus roll. Let's see what it'll be. Very welcome element. A hammerhead turn is a rare one. Corkscrew. Okay. Pretty basic. literally the first steel inversion, as traditional as it gets. Corkscrew is a corkscrew. I mean, it's literally one of the most fundamentally basic roller coaster elements out there. Arrow made it very famous with their corkscrew models, many coasters even being named corkscrew. We probably don't need all of this space for the element. I will see you when the corkscrew is done. Alright, there's the corkscrew done. Pretty simple element to make. It's a little modified in that it exits lower than it entered. We also are exiting into an airtime hill, really to make an excuse to turn away from the other bubble, which is over there. You can see how it takes the corkscrew. After the Mosasaurus roll, it's a very cool element to have. Very forceful, and it banks into the next transition. We could do the launch here to kind of refresh our speed. We are now on episode 4 or 5. This was 4. We are now entering 5. I will see you on the element wheel to figure out what this element will be. Corkscrews removed. Let's see what episode 5's element will be in that little bubble of theming. Reverse Cobra Roll. One of my least favorite elements to make. I hate this element. I lied. I do not hate this element. I love this element. I mixed it up with the non-inverting Cobra Roll, which actually you can see here on Conda. I hate this element. I hate this element a lot. My bad, Twisted Cyclone. I mistook you for a much less favorable element. We don't have to make this so compact, which we kind of are inadvertently. We literally have the entire map to work with, but let's see. I'm going to do the time lapse of me making this, and I will see you when this is done. Alright, there's our reverse Cobra Roll done, and upon completing it, I'm realizing that in my attempt to angle it away from the other pockets, it no longer looks like a reverse Cobra Roll, it looks like a demonic knot. And this pocket is actually themed after Moroi. And what's funny is Moroi actually has a demonic knot, so I was actually thinking about changing it, but because Moroi has a demonic knot, which this looks a lot alike, I think I'm actually going to keep it. I think it's a little kind of poetic in that way, that it matches the theme, that it has an element. We're entering the next launch section, so we are refreshed and back up to 60 miles per hour, entering into our next bubble. This will be episode 7. There is the reverse Cobra Roll removed, not the non-inverting one like I originally thought. Let's see what follows it to represent Komodo, which will be episode 6. The banana roll. Okay, we love a banana roll. The banana roll is pictured here. This is actually it on Ride to Happiness. It's also on Steel Curtain. You see that here, a very large one. This is going to be a tall element, but thankfully we were smart enough to do the friction wheels. So we are at full speed now. There's the banana roll done. Had to kind of make it a bit taller. Didn't realize just how fast the coaster was going, but I actually kind of like the pacing in which it takes it. This will represent Komodo. Definitely a very solid element. This will be a very jungly themed little pocket of theming. Very interesting. We were peeling a little bit to the right, and we were kind of veering away from where we entered. I don't want to see any more inner sections like we did here. Let's see what represents the next episode, which is one of my personal favorites. Episode 7, the Corporate Hell Coaster. There's the banana roll removed. Let's see what follows after it, and this will represent episode 7. Inline twist, okay. Never mind, it's a transitional element, I guess. I don't know. Horrible, horrible element. It's as you see here, this wheel in this episode is speedrunning every single possible roll type it can find. We've had a barrel roll, we've had a Mosasaurus roll, now we've had an inline twist. The only thing missing is a heartline roll, but watch it. Watch it pick it. We are going to use this as the actual theming element, not a transitional element, because we're going to have to raise this up. The reason this element is so bad, it's made for coasters that are on the edge of the track, similar to this wing coaster you see here. This is such a simple element, once again, that I'm probably not going to do the time lapse. I'm just going to skip it, just for the sake of keeping this video reasonably long. So this is the inline twist done. You can see the pocket is much smaller. I kind of envision this area being full of different advertisements or poster boards, billboards, whatever, throwing the corporate hell in your face while you're dodging it through the inline twist. Diving down under here into another pocket, which actually, while I was excavating this, we can't excavate this. So that tells me that we're probably at the end of the park. So I don't know where we are like relative to anything on the surface, but we are at the boundary of the park somewhere. So let's see what that element will be. This will represent episode 8, which was another one of my personal favorites, the Toyland coaster. There's the inline twist removed. Let's see what follows next, and it represents the toy-themed coaster from episode 8. Vertical loop, okay. Another super basic one, very similar to the corkscrew. Can't complain about a vertical loop. It is probably the most famous element of them all. One of the most basic ones out there. A loop-de-loop, whatever you want to call it. Everybody loves one of these. It does mean we're not going to be able to do it here. We are going to have to veer this track to the left and do the loop on the edge of the park. So I'll veer this to the left, and then I'll make that vertical loop. It will probably be a fairly tall one, not a small one. And I will see you after that is done for episode 9. So there's our vertical loop done. We did have to sweep it to the left. Pretty sizable, actually. I don't know exactly how tall it is. I can't really check either. So this is the Toyland little bubble. We are now kind of perpendicular with the edge of the park, so we may have to turn again. Let's see what follows next and what will represent episode 9, which was the Viking coaster, which we actually visited earlier in this episode. There's the vertical loop removed. Let's see what's next, and will represent the Viking coaster, the one-of-a-kind coaster, actually, where every element was unique. Zero-G roll, a not very one-of-a-kind or unique element, but a very cool one. Another pretty basic one. For those that don't know, a zero-G roll is essentially this. This is actually it on Talon, my local park, one of the best coasters in the park. It's found on all kinds of models. It's essentially just a roll. Shocker, another roll on this coaster. We are starting to kind of slowly get to the end of this. Probably after this element, we're going to have to figure out where the station is and start heading that way. I have no idea where we are. Alright, there's our zero-G roll. Definitely on the smaller side of zero-G rolls, but this is a spinning coaster that's starting to slowly kind of lose speed. Like I said, we are going to have to start veering towards the station, which if we click on this, we can kind of get a glimpse of where all the coaster is, which the majority of it is happening way over there. So here we are with the zero-G roll, and if we peel to the left, you can see that's where the station is. So we now have to veer to the left, which I'll probably just incorporate a little bit into the drop and the exit of the zero-G roll. That'll be our transition into the 10th bubble, episode 10 bubble, and we can start heading towards that over there. There's the zero-G roll removed. Let's see what follows after it, and will represent episode 10. S-Pens, okay, how boring. Episode 10 was the Japanese coaster, by the way, Tori. So it's kind of ironic because Tori is one of the most fascinating and detailed coasters in the series, and it's going to be represented by one of the most boring elements, an S-Pen. It's kind of fitting that we got an S-Pen, I guess, because the exit of the zero-G roll is kind of leaning itself towards S-Pens. So probably another one I'm not going to do a time-lapse for, by the way. So I will see you when these are done. Alright, there's the S-Pen done. Pretty simple element. Not going to really pay too much attention to this. You get the gist. We're now entering into a little straight, which will enter into the next bubble, episode 11, which was that crazy log flume pirate ride. There's the S-Pen removed. Let's see what is after. This will represent that pirate log flume ride, where we kind of redeemed Abyss. Camelback. Okay, a floater airtime hill, essentially. This is an element that's super famous on B&Ms, hypercoasters, gigacoasters. It's a floater airtime element. This is a great image of it here. First, I gotta excavate all of this, and then I will make the element. Alright, there's the Camelback hill done. I don't know if it's the right height for the speed of the coaster, but it's so easily adjustable, I don't really mind. We can always just do it later. Keep in mind we're heading towards that 199 there, so I'll add a little turn here, and then we will shift to episode 12, which was the 10,000 subscribers special, which had 5 different themes. So how we're going to attack this bubble, I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea. Let's see what will represent the 10,000 subscriber special after the Camelback element. Non-inverting loop. Okay, another element I don't really like. I'm not a huge fan of these non-inverting elements. They look cool, but they're kind of a pain to make. Non-inverting loop is exactly what it sounds like. I personally know it from Rip Ride Rocket when that was around at Universal. It's exactly what it sounds like. Like I said, 2 elements ago we just had the vertical loop, so it's kind of funny that we now have another loop, but it's not inverting this time. So let me build that quick, and I will see you after. Alright, there's our non-inverting loop done. Definitely a very weird element, but it kind of works. It's not the prettiest profiling you've ever seen in the world. Sorry about that. This will represent, like I said, the 10,000 subscriber special. How I'm going to navigate that, I don't know yet. But next we are jumping to episode 13, which was the abandoned coaster. Which, as I make this straight piece of track, we are now actually connecting to that first portal that we made. Alright, there's the non-inverting cobra roll removed. Let's see what follows after and represents the abandoned coaster. Another personal favorite of mine. A helix downward. How boring, but it's okay. I don't even think it's worth explaining what a helix downward is. It's just a spiral that goes down. Also probably not worth a time lapse either. Alright, here is the helix downward. Looks pretty cool actually, and this will be the abandoned theme, so maybe we can do some kind of abandoned mine or something, kind of lean towards the underground part. Like I mentioned, we are near the first portal. I will just cover this up more so you won't see any of this. We are now significantly lower than the station, so it's probably about time to do that next launch. We are exiting here. Let's see what follows next for episode 14, which will be the last element most likely, and it will represent the last episode, the Candyland episode. So there's the helix downward remove, which is actually the last one we needed to actually see all the elements, so kind of funny how that worked. Let's see what will represent episode 14, the last episode, and the Candyland one. Outer Banked Airtime Hill. This is actually pretty welcome because this will help us get up back towards the station. Outward banking airtime hills are pretty famous on Intamins, even Machs, as you see with the Striker model here. I personally think of RMCs. Here you see it on Steel Vengeance. It's an airtime hill with outward banking track. What I'll probably do is actually do the element on this plane and then do the launch and then just do some custom track work to get back up, because I'm thinking about the elements and the luck that we would need to actually line up with the station. It'd be a lot. So I'm just going to do this as the very last element, and then we'll have to figure out how to connect to the station all the way up there. Alright, there's the Outer Bank Airtime Hill dome, which looks really nice. You can see we're ending it higher than when we enter it, because now we're entering into the final boost of speed, heading into some airtime hills and some spins. This is what I was talking about for like a custom layout, just for the sake of getting back to the brake run, which you can see we have done. Now, hopefully 60 miles per hour is enough to get up there. If not, we might have to add some more. It is quite large. I haven't actually tested it. I don't know if it makes it. I will just make the adjustments off camera. We can kind of try and get a glimpse at how far out this coaster is. And really, we only go out here. So really, we're only filling maybe a quarter of the park with this layout. The layout looks pretty awesome. I mean, it's just cool element after cool element with nice bits of speed in between. And each pocket is going to be themed after a different episode. So I'm going to, of course, build all of that. I'm going to save my concluding thoughts on the series and this coaster for after this is done and themed. So I will see you then. I'm going to get to theming all this. For you guys, it'll be a few seconds. For me, it will be not a few seconds. Maybe the most unique coaster in the park. I will see you when it's done, polished, and touched up. Alright, we are back. As you can see, this is the entire coaster. It fits within this little convenient box on the surface. And yeah, that's it. So roll credits. Of course, I'm just kidding. This box is simply just the elevators to the actual ride. I wanted to start off on the surface, not only because it just makes more sense than going underground first, but also just to highlight just how small and insignificant this entrance is. Originally, it was supposed to be this like big kind of grand terminal, almost like a transportation center type of entrance. And it was going to be very loud and very obvious on the surface. And I actually built something very cool. I built like this big module with these like escalators and these stairs and almost like a subway essentially. But it was like 30,000 pieces, and I was only like a quarter of the way down, 300 feet below the surface. So after deleting all that, I ended up just making elevators. The game not only didn't want to move the tens of thousands of pieces, but also my frames didn't like it either. So ultimately the elevators had to be the way to go. And I kind of love the irony that this coaster genuinely is about a quarter of the size of the map. And I love that it's in this little black box and it's so easy to miss. I think it now is time to go 300 feet underground and actually introduce to you what is the wonderful tour. So if we jump, literally just phase through these elevator doors, you see we have these two huge elevator shafts. And if we go all the way to the bottom, we go 300 feet underground and enter into what is essentially a subway. This is a lot more like what I was trying to do from the get-go, but pretty much what I did is I translated what had to be trashed up there and pretty much just put it closer to the station, so now we're still getting that kind of subway feel with the poster boards and everything. The escalators, which by the way, these are not mine. I do not remember who created them, but I will attach them in the description because these are such cool escalators. Because I've left the game so many times, don't mind that they're out of sync. They don't look like escalators right now, they just look like big slides. But they are cool, and I will attach them in the description. After coming down 2 levels, we reach the main level where the station is, and you can kind of get a glimpse at one of my favorite features in the entire ride, which is almost this kind of memory hall of every single previous episode. Which, by the way, excuse the poor frames. I mean, I literally have dropped the graphics to try and help, but I mean, this coaster is huge. It's added so many more pieces, so just excuse that. But anyway, relative to what we're seeing here, every single episode, from the very first one all the way to the previous episode, Candy Dash, are all kind of honored and marked here. I thought, why not? I was originally going to do some posters like we saw up there, and then I just kind of thought about it. I was like, well, we have the opportunity to kind of make our own posters, so. And then, of course, this is episode 15, so you have an episode 15 sign pointing at the station itself. It's the Wheel of Wonder station, kind of in the theme of a subway, as we've been talking about. You may notice that there's these lights attached to it because it's so dark. And I thought that that was a great idea until I realized that they spin and that you're not going to be able to see anything anyway. So I'm going to do 2 POVs at the end of this video. One of the track view and then one of the spinning point of view. Just so you have both, but just be prepared. You're not going to see anything in the spinning point of view. But either way, as we enter through these doors, you can get a glimpse at just how dark everything is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off global illumination so you can actually see everything. It's going to look terrible, so I'm going to preface this by saying you are about to see the most untidy design work that you've ever seen in any Planet Coaster video, certainly of the Wheel of Wonders. There's floating objects, there's messy designs, there's things that just don't make sense, but they look good when everything is off and the lights are turned off. So just know that. So there we go, global illumination is turned off so you can actually see everything. And the first thing we see is pretty much a testament to what I just said. 2 floating Wheel of Wonders, spinny thingies. Obviously they're just floating in the air with no kind of supports. So just kind of get used to that theme. You also see that the track doesn't have any supports on this Sidewinder. Again, just get used to that. You're going to see more of that. But anyway, the interesting stuff now. So as I mentioned, we have a holding section. So I wanted to have some kind of little show moment before we head into what would be the next episode, because we are doing every single element more or less themed after each sequential episode. So of course that makes episode 1 Deadeye, which was Western themed. So that's what this entire little kind of saloon village thing is themed after. After the coaster goes through the Sidewinder and breaks a little bit, we have the beginning, and then these doors flap open. And then you have this kind of boiler room playing some kind of saloon music next door. And it holds you here, it fills with smoke, and essentially these doors launch open and shoot you to episode 2, which of course was Scribble and Draft. I'm actually going to get the train running so we can actually kind of get a glimpse at what I'm talking about while we're going through it. But while we're waiting for that, let me introduce you to episode 2's little features. This is a pretty good little example of kind of how I'm approaching each individual element. You can see I literally took the saxophone elements from the second episode. So I'm trying to kind of honor literally the coaster from the video if it had any iconic moments, which this is one of the most iconic moments in the entire series, and also kind of merging it with the general theme that was present, which is the Planet Coaster theme from that episode, which you can see the giant king coaster, the giant floating logo up there, and then this kind of exit pre-build transitioning to the 3rd episode. So let's get that train going so we can actually kind of see. Oh, there it goes. Wow. There are plenty of lights that go off, which of course you're not going to really be able to see because we don't have global illumination on. Yeah, you can also get a really good glimpse at how bad the frames are. But heading into the 3rd episode, we are approaching Abyss, which was actually the Lost episode. This was one of the easier ones to theme. I mean, it's just a Kraken filled with shipwrecks and such. Red lights pop out everywhere. Kraken goes after you. Pretty easy stuff. Jumping into episode 4, which of course was Colossus, which kind of had a difficult element with the corkscrew, but I just had to kind of go through the support structure that is actually taken directly from Colossus. And then of course we had to get the Poseidon statue as well. So after it goes through that corkscrew, we then jump down here and then spin to the right, which of course sequentially we are at Moroi. Again, you can see that there's a bunch of lights that do light up. You can see I created like a mini version of the mountain that makes Moroi so famous, and also kind of continued the little kind of gothic architecture that is seen in that build. Leaving that, we then head into the second launch, which then goes to Komodo, which this is one of my favorite areas. I mean, you just take a glimpse at it now, completely covered and overgrown with foliage and greenery. And we even have some reactions with fire, which of course, if you remember from the Komodo episode, has this very similar interaction moment. After weaving through some more like temples and statues and such, we then enter the next episode, which is one of my personal favorites. It's the corporate coaster. You can see the coaster just blasts through the billboard. Actually, I think getting clipped there, passing all of these advertising boards, which again, is just the kind of corporate hellscape that episode surrounded. And of course, a highway. We could not have a highway in this section. Then going after that, we then have the very famous crocodile dentist feature from the Toyland episode. So that flies through the mouth of that to enter the toy section, which was the vertical loop, which you can see revolves around the kaleidoscope. Plenty of Legos, plenty of Lincoln Logs, plenty of building blocks. Pretty simple stuff for the most part. Flies through this alien underpass and then sweeps into the next episode after that, which I believe is episode 9. This was the Viking coaster. You can see we took the saxophone element, the big wooden structure that the saxophone holds from that episode. Of course, no train on it, but we do have the structure itself, which the coaster does a 0G roll over. Sweeping under that, then we enter the Japanese coaster, Tori, which you can see we literally just took the sign that lights up to kind of get a little bit of a Neo Tokyo vibe. Plenty of villas, plenty of bridges. Yeah, another really solid area, exiting through a Tori gate. And then once again, literally taking the entire structure from that episode. We are on episode, I believe, 12 this is, with the 300-foot log flume. We just took the entire fortress and placed it underground, essentially. Obviously, realism is out the window. How this would be 300 feet underground, yeah, I mean, obviously it can't. I guess that's the fun of a video game, right? So the Camelback Hill goes there, pretty sweet, exiting past some more coastal buildings. And then this is episode 12 with the 10,000 subscriber special, which this was probably the most complicated one. Obviously, there were 5 different themes in that episode. I decided to choose, because we're underground, I chose the horror section because we were underground in that episode. So I know people don't like spiders, but it felt very appropriate to do the spider theme of all of those. After it weaves through there, we then enter the next one, which episode 13, the abandoned episode, which you can see we literally threw a spiral slide and had it kind of overgrown with foliage. This is probably the most underwhelming one of all of them, but I thought we did a pretty good job for what was kind of difficult to place underground. Then we're swooping into episode 14, the very last one, the Candyland, which of course looks way more like cavernous than it really is. Trust me, when the lights are off, it looks way better. And then after that, probably the most boring part of the entire ride, unthemed, really just to look like kind of tunnels more than anything, is really just this launch section as I'm following the train in horrible frames, which sends the train back to the station, past one last wheel. Again, you can see just these little unfinished edges, and excuse my my corners that I'm cutting. But anyway, we are back in the station, and that kind of covers the entire build. I'm showing you guys a lot of the behind the scenes, definitely pulling the curtain back, but I don't mind. This is the reality of what building something like this looks like, so why not? Now it is time to look at the stats before we inevitably do the POV and then maybe cinematic. Very large question mark. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, or if I'm going to do it at all. It just might not logistically look very nice with how intimate and tight everything is underground. Either way, relative to stats, let's see what it is over here. All green across the board. Maybe a little shocking that it's actually not red the other way, like that it's too aggressive considering that it's a spinning coaster, but 6.55 excitement is extremely good. 4.14 fear is a little bit higher than usual, but in the green, and 0.9 nausea. I can't believe it's not over 1 at the very least. Very good stats for what is one of the longest coasters in the entire park. I think there's a total of like 18 elements on this thing. This is definitely one way to end the series. Individual stats, we have 8,000 feet of track, so just a little bit less than the 10,000 subscriber special. 145 seconds of duration. Average speed of 37 miles per hour. Biggest drop of 100 feet. Max vertical G-force of 4.5, which is fair. 12 inversions. 4 seconds of airtime across 5 moments. Not bad at all. Very, very solid ride. Definitely a really solid way to end the series, truthfully. So with that said, let's talk a little bit before we wrap this up and go to the POV and the potential cinematic. Let's talk about quickly what the plan is for this series. I'm not going to cover too much now in this video. We are going to do like a big recap video, pretty much touring the entire park, which I do plan to have Kylie join in on that. We're going to go over the stats of how many elements were used across the entire park, the different coaster models used, what's the fastest coaster, what's the slowest coaster, what's the shortest, what's the longest. All these different records and statistics will definitely cover, almost like this season finale, like you would see in some kind of reality TV show almost. We're of course going to do the tour itself and actually interact with this park at the ground level. And then we're going to go back and forth and actually talk about which ones are our favorites, which ones are our least favorite, how do we rank them based off of theming, how do we rank them based off of the actual layout itself. So that'll be very fun. It will of course open the discussion to you guys as well. I may do some polls talking about how this season went, and I may actually do some additional polls asking about some of y'all's thoughts for what should be here next season. Which, if you want to let me know in this video what your ideas are for what you would like to see in next season. I have plenty of ideas, but of course you guys have some that I'm sure I didn't think of. So have a blast in the comments. I will look at all of them. And yeah, I will see you in that recap video. Thank you for tuning into this series. This has definitely been a great way to wrap this up. This episode has been very, very interesting. I'm really excited for you guys to see the POV. And yeah, I will see you in that review where we can actually truly kind of reminisce in the entire park itself. I will see you then, and take care.